Come on in, bestie. Welcome to StoryPod, where we do the doing of story development together. Brought to you by Creative BFF. Hello, and welcome to the StoryPod podcast. I am Ashley, your host and bestie. Okay, listen. Bestie for life. If you're trying to write something, do something kind of story, if you need help, let me know. That's what I'm here for. Okay. But until we find each other, I am forced to go to the waters of Reddit. It's not forced. I enjoy going there to find people's questions, which is what we're doing today. I kind of jumped all the way ahead. Welcome to the podcast. Okay. This is a video and audio edition. So please feel free to jump on over to my YouTube if you want to watch it there. But if you just want to listen, because you're walking, you're doing your meal prep, whatever it is, vacuuming, I don't know, feel free, girl, listen. That's what we're here for. This is what we do. This is how we hang out. Okay. So today, as I kind of alluded to, we are doing another question from Reddit, another story question from Reddit. I love these. Right now, there's a lot of these because they're fun to do, and I want to answer your questions. So if you found this and you have a story question, please feel free to throw a comment wherever you're listening to this, or you can email me. I don't know why I had to look up where can they email me? You can email me at ash@creativebff.com, or you can go to my website, creativebff.com. You can go to the contact section and you can shoot me a little message, and I'd be happy to answer your question here on the podcast. So let's get down to it. We have a fun one today because it deals with romance, and I love romance. Okay. I'm so sorry. So let's read the question. It comes from the r/fantasy writers subreddit by Samurai Marine. Okay. Advice: making a ghost woman real. Question for my story. So in brief, the story is about a man who encounters a woman that is a ghost. Over the course of the story, he falls in love with the woman and wants her to be a part of his life. I'm looking for a way that is not science fiction-y, in which I can have her at some point become alive or at least corporeal. While she is in the house, she is sort of corporeal in that she can interact with things that are part of the house, but I am kind of stuck as to how to make her into a living person again. Think of the Ghost and Mrs. Muir in reverse. Instead of having him dying to be with her, some power allows her to come back to be with him. Things I have drafted and then tossed out. She takes over another person's body. I got rid of this because I would like her to look the same as the way he sees her. I considered a magic solution but could not find a convincing way in the story. I wrote a test draft where they found her body and were going to do something that way, but I thought I would lose readers with that and quit. I keep coming to the idea of some kind of portal between the afterlife and this world, but I'm not sure how that would gel with the readers. Note, I'm not asking anyone to write this piece for me. I just need something to stimulate my own thoughts on the matter. Where better to ask than a bunch of other writers? Thanks in advance for any ideas, thoughts, and comments. So I feel like this is kind of like a fun one. I'll focus on the camera. And I had an idea off the bat, but I feel like I also want to kind of address some of the concerns. It seems like this, if you see me looking to the side, I'm looking at the post again. It seems like, and I don't think this is a bad thing, but a number of the possible solutions that Samurai Marine threw out, it's because they're not sure if the audience would like it. Well, I appreciate that type of concern. I think that if you build into the logic of the world, whichever one of these feels most organic to your story is the most enjoyable for you to write. If you build it into the logic so it doesn't come out of left field, it doesn't feel, what is the term? Deus ex machina or whatever, God in the machine, like where it's just like a convenient solution. I believe that that's what that refers to, right? If I'm wrong, let me know in the comments below. But if it's not just a convenient solution that kind of comes out of nowhere, descending from the sky, as it were, then I think that the audience will be fine with it, and if you can make it so that it's not obvious, but if the reader looks back and is like, oh, I can see how this would work, well played, author, then that's a very satisfying kind of solution, right? And maybe what I'll do here is also kind of think about ways that each one of these could work out, what you might need to build in. But getting into my immediate thought, if we're ruling out all of those things, you don't want magic, you don't want science fiction, possibilities, you're not really wanting to do a portal between life and afterlife, then a solution that I could think of that, you would have to suspend your disbelief for it to work is like, well, maybe she's not actually dead. Maybe she's in a coma somewhere, so that the gag is just really rejoining her consciousness and her body rejoining her consciousness, her spirit with her body. Now, how her spirit is somehow wandering around this gave me another idea, in this house, that is going to be another, and there's ways to do that. There's so many possibilities of how that could be achieved, but it may require science fiction. It may require fantasy. Another option that I just came up with is, and this kind of is still in the fantasy, but they're on the Fantasy Writers subreddit. So you're going to have some kind of fantasy. You want a ghost to come back to life. So it's going to be something that's not real, right? Maybe they're both, in some kind of dream state. Maybe now this is pulling it out of death. You know what I'm saying? But maybe they're both like in comas or something like that. And this house is a place where their minds are meeting. Maybe this is a place where maybe it's a place of dreams where they're meeting and falling in love and things like that. Those are kind of like really outside of the realm of what this writer wants to do. So those might not be solutions that they want to do, but let's kind of look at solutions, some of the things that they've drafted. I'm going to pull it up so I can see it a little more easily. Please forgive me. So the first one, excuse me, is that she takes over another person's body. I'm probably not even going to address this one because I don't think that this is the right solution. Not only because she wouldn't look the same as her ghost spirit does, but also depending on how it's set up, it doesn't have to necessarily be the problem that I'm getting ready to suggest, but it's kind of janky that she's just going to take over somebody else's body. I mean, I guess you could do it to where it's a person who's dying, their body, it's like the spirit just left the body, and so now she can kind of inhabit that body, but it's like the person was dying, the body was failing, so it wouldn't be a good body to choose anyway, right? You would be reanimating reanimating a corpse that perhaps has some kind of physical trauma. Maybe they were hit by a car, or had some kind of prolonged sickness or sudden illness or something, but for whatever reason the body is being vacated, so the body is not necessarily viable. So that leaves the other option of her just like yanking somebody else's body, and that makes her character not one that I would like. If we're not going sweet, loving, wonderful, good characters, if this is more of a dark romance type of thing, and if this would fit with her character, that she takes somebody else's body, maybe it's a villainous type of person, okay, and as long as it works within the logic of the characters in the story, you could do that. And then you could probably come up with some kind of way for it to turn the body into something looking like that character, but we're going to disregard that one. Moving on to the other ones. A magic solution, but couldn't find a convincing way in the story. So the solution to that, if you want to do something magic, is you just build it into the world that you're creating. If it wouldn't work if this is just like our normal world, right? Where magic is not really like a thing, right? That doesn't mean that stuff that seems like magic doesn't happen doesn't mean that supernatural things don't happen, but it's just like what we see in fantasy as far as magic is not a reality of our world. And so if you're basing it on our world and magic is not really an element, then yeah, it's going to be not convincing. But you know, you may just, if you want to do a magic angle, you'll just need to create a world in which magic is a part of it, or it's starting to become a part of it. Or perhaps this might be cliched, but like, you know, you can pull from various cultures, fables and folklore. You know, you can pull into the Fae, which is not, I would say it's a well-trodden world trope, whatever, to pull from, but perhaps it's well-trodden for a reason. It's a world and it's a trope that people enjoy. It's something that, you know, sparks the imagination. We enjoy it as a species, right? Humans, readers, plenty of readers enjoy seeing things in which the fairy fae world plays a part. So perhaps the house is sort of like a part of the fairy fae world, and so there's something that can be done that can bring a person back to life, you know. But if you want a magical solution, I'm not going to really like try to come up with a bunch of ways, because it really depends on the story that you want to give. But if you want a magical solution, then you would just need to go back and seed that in the story, make it fit within the logic of the world, and then you can have a magical solution that would still be convincing. It doesn't have to be, you can be really unique with your magic system, with the world that you've created, how the magic is intertwined with the world. It can be unique, you know, something more original than what we maybe see all over the place. You know, maybe it's not fairyland, maybe it's something else totally. But as long as you build it into the story, I think that you can still make it convincing. So the next draft where they find her body and we're going to do something that way, but you thought it would lose readers with that and quit. With this one, without actually kind of digging into the details of how that actually works, what they actually do, how it fits, again, I beat this horse, but it's so important. The logic of the world that you're setting up, it doesn't necessarily have to lose readers, right? It can totally be a part of this story as long as you make it make sense in the world that you've created. I specifically, as a reader, so this one kind of ties into my sort of off the top of the dome, like, well, maybe she's in a coma and they find her body. Maybe she's not fully dead. Maybe it's kind of like the Princess Bride, if you've seen that movie, where the hero is tortured to the point almost of death. They think he's dead, but there's just a little bit of life left in him, and they feed him some kind of seed, I think is how it goes, and it brings him fully back to life. So it could be something along that line, where it's like, or even Snow White, where she eats the poison apple, she looks dead, but a kiss revives her. The kiss of her true love revives her, right? And she coughs up the apple piece. I think I don't know if that happens in the original cartoon or even in the original fantasy. I'm going off of the Disney cartoon 50s, 30s, 20s, whenever it came out. Probably like 20s, right? 29? I don't know. Going based off of that telling of the story, I don't know if she coughs up the apple, but I've seen other versions where she coughs up the apple piece just being lodged in her throat. So it could be something along those lines of she's not fully, totally dead, and there is a way to bring her back, but it just has to fit within the logic of your world building, right? So then the next option, a portal between the afterlife and the real world. That might be the one of this list that maybe has the most promise. I feel like that's kind of a cool idea. There is quite a bit that you can do with it. There's some conflict that you can bring in. Is that a thing that has happened before? That is possible that, if I don't know if this is where you really want to go with the story, but like if they do this with her, they open that portal, can it be, happen with other people? And then if you want to make this like a series, having that as an element that works within your world, if you want to do more ghost living love stories and how they bring the ghost back to life. But if you did that and it was like a continual trope or a continual mechanic in your story, I feel like you would have to make it not easy to do. Something that each particular couple would have to overcome hurdles that are unique and specific to them in order to make it happen. So it's not just like the portal can be open for whatever. Maybe, okay, here we go. Maybe even like pulling in again to other cultures. I'm not even sure if this is actually part of like, okay, let me not even specifically say what celebration I was going to say, because I don't know if I'm saying the right thing, but I believe, if I'm not mistaken, there are certain cultures in the world that believe on certain nights during certain celebrations that deceased loved ones come back, right, for the night. I don't know if that's a thing, but you could build that into your world where perhaps there is some kind of cosmic alignment that happens. And when all the conditions are right in this particular house or at this particular place, it's possible for one person to be resurrected. Maybe it's even like a wish granted type of thing. Like you find the Dragon Balls and you get one wish and you bring your girl back to life, right? Wasn't Goku resurrected a couple times when they found the Dragon Balls? So maybe that's a thing. Maybe there's a little bit of a journey that the hero can go on to find some kind of artifact or something in order to bring this person back. Perhaps it's not death. Perhaps it's like a curse that was put on her and she maybe thinks that she's dead, but perhaps she's not actually dead. Maybe it does tie back into finding the body and having to do something with that body in order to bring her back or to lift the curse in some kind of way. Perhaps the house is cursed that, every generation or something, a person living in the house is bound to this house forever. Their spirit is bound or something like that. But they're not actually like dead. Maybe because she's not in the afterlife, she can be brought back to life. You can look into and kind of think about, what does it mean to have matter? Maybe look into some science. What does it mean to be corporeal? Are there other ways to become corporeal other than just being born? Just being born, you know what I'm saying? How does matter act? Is it possible without having her body to have some sort of something, whether it's magical, supernatural, or whatever the case may be, scientific, to recreate matter, right? I guess it really just, okay, so they did specifically say they didn't want science fiction, so I'm not going to go science fiction-y, but that leaves, if you're doing this, it leaves supernatural, it leaves fantasy, magic, right? If you don't want to do science fiction. So we're removing science from involvement in this. So it's going to have to be some kind of magic thing. I mean, maybe you could even tie it into he has to give some part of himself. I don't know, a rib, I don't know, for, her to be kind of rebuilt on. I don't know. So, hopefully this was helpful. I don't know if this person is ever going to see it or if they will see it in a time, this video or hear this podcast in a time that would be beneficial for them. Because I think I grabbed this character this post a few weeks ago for me to answer. So they probably have moved on and made their decision already. But in terms of it being helpful, I hope it was helpful to you, watcher, listener, my bestie, my friend, as you're thinking about, you know, perhaps being concerned about whether the audience. I think that the main takeaway, outside of just answering this specific question, I think that the main takeaway is if you're concerned that a solution you are presenting for whatever your story is, the audience won't like it, it won't gel with them. I think that the main takeaway is that you have a better chance of it. Excuse me. You have a better chance of your solution gelling with the audience if you make it fit within the logic of your world. Now, there's always going to be, before I leave you, I have to give this example. There's always going to be people who don't really like the solution that you've come up with, and that's fine because people have different tastes and everybody maybe would have a different way that they would solve this problem. But at the end of the day, there are so many different types of readers that you cannot allow you trying to please every one of those types of readers to keep you from finishing your story. At the end of the day, if you do your best to build it into the world and you go with a solution that feels right to you as a writer, there are going to be people who will like it. There are going to be people who like it, and there are going to be people who maybe don't like it. Now, before I leave you, I want to talk about this as it relates to that. So going back to the what is that series called? The Twilight series, right? Okay. So as I have mentioned in previous episodes, I read it and I was really into it the first time that I read the series. But I had a huge issue with the way that they resolved Jacob's story, to the point where for a long time I was making up other fan fiction in my mind that I never wrote for Jacob to resolve what I felt like was a terrible way that they took his character, or that she took his character, the author. Spoilers, spoiler alert, but this series has been out for a long time. So what she ended up doing was she made Jacob imprint on Bella's baby. I don't like that at all. But here's the thing about it. She did prepare the audience for that possibility, and it was one that I did not see coming. There were other characters within the werewolf tribe where we see this particular world logic of werewolves imprinting on somebody, and now that becoming basically their center of gravity. That person becomes their center of gravity. That person does not have to return their love. They don't have to, that person is not now forced to marry or be in love with that person. But, now for the rest of the wolf's life, they will at least be, bound by that imprint to want to make sure that person is safe, to want to care for them, whatever. Now that I'm remembering, she did have another character in the wolf pack who imprinted on a young child. And she tried to make it very clear that this imprinting was not romantic or sexual at this time, because the guy who imprinted, I think, was probably a teenager. I don't think he was in his 20s. I think he was a teenager, and the child that he imprinted on, she was like a toddler. And I think there was even a scene of him playing with her at the beach. And so it's not, so the author tried to be it's not romantic. He's just very protective of her. But I believe, if I'm not mistaken, you let me know if I'm mistaken in the comments, that she kind of alluded to the fact that when this girl became of age, that perhaps there would be romance that would happen between them. Gross. I don't care. Gross. I didn't like it, but because it was a side character, it was okay, well, that's weird. And then we just moved on with other stuff happening in the story. Now, to her credit, she did foreshadow that. And I feel like this is a terrible solution. I feel like that should not have been the case, but it's her story. Okay? It's her story. She foreshadowed it. She showed us that it's a possibility. And so then when Jacob did it, and it's kind of like using that as the excuse of that was why he was so into Bella, because some part of him knew that he would imprint on her baby. Some part of, I don't know. That was gross to me. I didn't like it. And I felt like it was a disservice to Jacob as a character. I felt like he should have not even in the story. Like, we're not focusing on Jacob anyway. He's the second lead. Now, I was team Jacob. All right. I loved a good best friend love. Okay. At that time, but just give him a side story. Let him find someone totally else who is of age, okay? Not a baby fresh out the womb. And now it's kind of like, okay, there was all these other extenuating things of like, because Bella's baby was like half vampire, half human, she was gonna grow super fast, right? So she's like leaps and bounds. I think that she almost becomes like an adult within a very short amount of time. I don't know how long the timeline was. So it wasn't like she was going to be a baby for 20 years and Jacob was going to have to wait around for that. Now, the other thing that she put in there is that once the wolf's imprint, I think their aging slows down drastically. And I think that it also affects the person that they imprint on. So they age very slowly at that point. But I felt like that was a terrible solution. I did not like it. Like I said, she put it in there. She let us know. And I didn't see it coming because I'm like, surely she wouldn't do that. I didn't even think to attribute it to Jacob. But that, me telling that was just an example of, even if you do kind of like foreshadow, you do kind of seed that, you do allude to it, you do build it into the logic of your world, whatever the solution is that you're coming up with, there's going to be somebody who doesn't like it. But I feel pretty strongly that you'll have a better chance as long as there's not like a super underage age gap situation going along with it that leans towards something that is inappropriate that we don't like as a society. Okay? Thank you. That's all I have to say about that. Listen, love you. Have a great rest of your day. Blessings to you. Peace to you. Okay, until the next time that we meet. Goodbye.